Hey everybody, Pierre Quinn here, and I want to thank you for joining me for Sunday Night Live. I've been doing these late night leadership sessions for a couple of weeks now, and I want to thank you for stopping the scroll or for checking out the replay as we take a bit of a deep dive as it relates to leadership for you to start your week. If you don't know anything about me and you just randomly stop the scroll, I want to thank you for pausing. My name is Pierre Quinn. I empower leaders and the organizations that they serve to better assess their strengths, to build stronger cultures, and to foster the relationships that lead to personal and professional transformation. And in this Sunday Night Live session, we're going to have a conversation about the stories, the untold stories that limit your ability to lead effectively. So I need you to do two things for me as we're getting started. Number one, I need you to hop in that comment section, check in with us, let me know where you're checking in from. I love to shout out my virtual audience. And even if you're watching the replay of this, hop in the comments and let me know that you were watching. The second thing is also so important because I'm on a mission in 2021 to help as many leaders as I possibly can. And you can partner with me in doing that by hitting that share button. The share button really just tell social media this is something worth paying attention to. All right, so going to take a deep dive as we talk about the stories, the untold stories that can really limit, can really challenge our ability to lead effectively. Now, this Sunday Night Live session, this Sunday Night Live leadership easel pad session is brought to you by the 4 Nights to Clarity leadership course that can be found at prcquinn.com/clarity. That's prcquinn.com/clarity. Gain greater leadership clarity in just 4 nights. It's a powerful course. I recorded it easel pad style, just like this, live in front of a virtual audience. And it's designed to help you lead with greater clarity and courage in 2021. Find out more information about that at prcquinn.com/clarity. All right. So let's get started tonight. We got Antonio Lennon, leader shift coach, checking in from Summerville, South Carolina. Thanks, Antonio, for checking in with us for this Sunday night session. And as you're coming in, as you're stopping the scroll, as you're checking out what's going on, hop in that comment section. And let me know that you're hanging out with us. So we want to have this conversation about stories. We want to have this conversation about stories. Last year, I read a book by Matthew Loon, and the title of that book is Best Story Wins. The Best Story Wins by Matthew Loon. Matthew Loon was one of the leading animators at Pixar. He's worked on many of the Pixar films that our families have come to love and know over the years, have Matthew Loon's imprint all over it. And in our conversation and in his book, Matthew Loon was talking about it's not just great movies that leverage the power of storytelling. It's businesses that understand, it's organizations that understand. If you can tell the best story, then you can have the greater interest in what you're doing. And what I found as I've been working with leaders for about 15 years now, sometimes we struggle with navigating our personal narrative. So I'm reading this book. The title of the book is It Didn't Start With You. And the book is focusing on how family trauma can impact all the areas of our lives. And for a lot of us, when it comes down to our family stories, we haven't told enough of our family narrative. And if we tell more of the family narrative, if we walk through more of our family story, we can have a better understanding of some of the challenges that we face as leaders. Because the fact remains that there are just some things you can't outwork. There are just some things you just can't grind your way through or grind your way out of. There are things in your life as a leader that will only be leveraged as you process it. And a big part of that is understanding some of your deep family stories. So I want to give you my scenario. And one of the things that I struggle with. I talk about this in one of my keynote sessions, the keynote entitled how to find the courage to keep going. And I tell the story. I tell the story of an opportunity that I had several years ago to work for a consulting company. It was after my first book, Leading While Green, came out. There was some buzz. I was selling a lot of copies of the book. I was doing social media promos. I was traveling and speaking. It was a great experience. And I get on the radar of this consulting company where I lived in Bowling Green, Kentucky at the time. So I'll just put myself here. I'll just put my name here. And I had a conversation with the director of the consulting agency, the consulting company. He said, listen, we read your book. We've checked out some of your work. We've asked around town. We want you to come and work for us. We want you to come and work for us on a contract basis. We will work around your schedule. We feel like you have something to offer the clients that we serve, and we think this would be a fabulous partnership. So I have this offer to work for a consulting company. We're talking about stories and the untold stories that can really limit leaders on this Sunday Night Live session. I get the offer to work for this consulting company, and I think about it for about a week. I talk to some friends. I talk to some mentors. I talk to my parents. I talk it over with my wife, and we're having this conversation around what's the next step. Mind you, I've just put out my first leadership book. I've just been teaching about leadership in the area. I'm also pastoring at the same time. There's a lot going on, and I get this offer. I think about it for a week, and I say no. And here is the reason that I say no. I say no because I told the individuals who are running the consulting company that I just have too much on my plate with the churches that I'm leading, with the responsibility with my small family. There's a lot being asked of me at this time, so I'm going to have to decline the offer. Here's the truth. Remember, stories that limit leaders. The truth was simply this. The truth was simply that I was scared. I was scared to take this opportunity because I didn't know how it was going to turn out. Now, if you're hanging out with us in the comment section, let me know if you have any time in your personal story, your personal narrative. Has there ever been a time where someone has offered you an incredible opportunity and you said no simply because you're scared? I mean, that's the reason even why I got these shirts printed up. Don't stop because you're scared. Have you ever had in your professional journey, in your personal history, a time when someone offered you an incredible opportunity and you said no simply because you were scared? You walked away, you turned it down, you rejected the offer, and it was you had the capabilities, you had the opportunity to learn and grow, but you walked away simply because you were scared. If you can resonate with that in any form or fashion, drop a comment in the comment section. Chris Bartley says, oh, absolutely. So here's the story. Thanks, Chris, for checking in. Here's what happened. The offer to work at the consulting company. Early 30s now. Offer to work at the consulting company. Just finished my first book called Leading While Green. I've been teaching about leadership. I get this offer and I walk away from the offer simply because I was scared. And I hung on to that for several years. It's a big part of one of my keynotes about leadership and courage. I hung on to that for several years. Well, I started reading this book called It Didn't Start With You. And the book is talking about family trauma and the impact of family trauma on our adult decision making. And as I'm reading this book, or actually listening to it because it's on audiobook as I'm running, I'm thinking about the implications of family trauma on our decisions as leaders. I'm processing. I said, a big chunk of this book, what the author is saying to me, I want to be able to pass on to my Sunday Night Live audience. And here's what made so much sense to me. There is a lid. Listen to me very, very closely here. There is a lid on much of what we offer. There's a lid on our capacity that has nothing to do with how hard we work, because you work incredibly hard as a leader. It's nothing to do with your gifts and talents and skills, because you are gifted, you are talented, you are skilled. So it's not hard work because you're working hard. It's not the lack of talent or skill because you have talent and skill that you're contributing. A big part of what's keeping you limited as a leader in your organization, as an entrepreneur, wherever you serve, as a teacher, as a pastor, as a doctor, doesn't matter how high you've climbed the corporate ladder or how much money your organization or entity has made or brings in with donations. There is a lid that has nothing to do with hard work and nothing to do with talent, skill, and ability. And it has everything to do with the trauma that your family has experienced. It has everything to do with the trauma and challenges your family has experienced. And I know when we're talking about professional development, when we're talking about leadership, we try to leave these conversations on the side, but they're so applicable because we spend so many hours with other people in our jobs, 8, 10, 12, 14 hours a day, sometimes more with our jobs than we do with our families. And we neglect to talk about these personal, emotional, mental health challenges that are having huge implications on our leadership, because we say the job is not the space or the place. And I'm telling you, if you want to have a better organization in 2021, you need to create spaces and places in your leadership development program for your people to actually talk through what might be some of the personal challenges to their leadership capacity. All right, so let me give this to you in as it's moving through my personal narrative. I didn't take the opportunity. I wrestled with that for several years. Why didn't I take it? What was I scared of? And then I had a conversation with my parents. And then I had another conversation with my parents. And then I had another conversation with my parents. And then after I listened to that section of the book in preparation for sharing this content with you, I had another conversation with my parents. And I said, tell me the story again. Tell me the story again, because I'm trying to figure out what has happened. What were the traumatic challenges that happened in our family narrative that might be keeping me limited at this stage of the game, at this stage of my business, at this level of leadership and entrepreneurship? What are the challenges? So my dad told me this. He said, I'll put my dad here. My dad said when he was in his early 30s, he was working for a mortgage and appraisal company. And he had the opportunity to move from where we lived in Pontiac, Michigan, to maybe, I think it was a couple of hours away from where we lived, to start up a new branch of this appraisal firm. Now, at the same time, my dad and my grandmother and my uncle had started a family business. We had a commercial dry cleaning and laundry operation. The business was starting to take off, and it was starting to make a lot of money and pick up steam and pick up contracts. But my dad, in addition to that, receives this incredible professional opportunity to move to another city, a different socioeconomic, a different demographic framework. My dad has the opportunity to move there, to leverage his career. My mom is ready to go. And everything is aligned for us to go. And my dad says, no. Why? Because my dad was scared. Do you see it yet? Offer to work for a consulting firm on a contract basis. I say no because I'm scared. And I didn't outline what I was scared of. So I'll do that. I'll break that down. What was I scared of? I was scared of what others would say. I was scared that other people would say, wait a minute, I thought you were a pastor. Why are you going into leadership consulting? I know you wrote a leadership book, but why are you going into leadership consulting? Isn't that against your calling or what you're supposed to be doing? I was scared of what other people would say. I was scared of the fit. I was scared of that I would not fit. Why? Because when I walked through the doors of this consulting firm, to sit down and talk with the partners and the person who was managing, and I looked at the roster of all the other consultants that worked in a contract basis, there was nobody that looked like me. There was nobody my age. and there was nobody with my ethnic background. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying, wait, the other people are going to have this negative opinion if I, as a pastor, go and work for this consulting firm, and I'm looking at the roster and I don't see anybody that looks like me. I don't know if I'll be able to fit in there. I don't know. I don't know if I'll be able to mesh. I don't know if I'll fully be accepted in this context. And here's the other part. The general unknown. I had never been a consultant before. So these were the factors that went into me rejecting this incredible opportunity. Richard Branson said, if someone offers you a once in a lifetime opportunity or an incredible opportunity, say yes and figure out how to do it later. Yeah, that's a great quote. And that quote slaps this in the face because this is a struggle. I'm saying other people will say I've run away from my calling because I'm a leadership consultant. I don't know if I'll fit because ethnically there's nobody that looks like me, and I've never done leadership consulting before, so I'm going to walk away from this opportunity. And when I asked my dad, what in your narrative matches up with that, my dad said he had an opportunity in his early 30s to move to a place and start a different branch of a business that he was being mentored in, and he was scared. What was my dad scared of? He was scared that the family business would die without him. He was scared of the unknown. And he was scared of the fit because he was going to a place where ethnically the people did not look like him. Is it making sense to you as you're watching this live? Is it making sense to you as you're watching the replay? In my 30s, I'm wrestling with some of the same fears that my father faced in his 30s, and he only had the conversation with me a couple of years ago. Some of us in our capacities were facing scenarios that are similar to the scenarios that our parents or grandparents faced, but we've never talked about it. And we think there's just something wrong with us. We think we just have to work harder or try harder or just buy another course or listen to another talk. And it's just going to click for us. It's not going to click. It's not going to change until you have a conversation about the stories. So I asked my dad, okay, go back a generation. Tell me. And my dad said, and he writes about this in his book. My dad writes about this in his book, What I Missed. He said that my grandmother worked a lot, so he can't remember offhand all of the stories or the challenges that my grandmother faced, that his mom faced in her narrative, because they never had that conversation. They never had the conversation about the things that she faced and that she was afraid of. So my father never had the narrative insight that would have given him clarity on his journey. But he did say that my grandmother, when his brother, my uncle, was getting ready to go to college, he had a full scholarship, a full wrestling scholarship. And my grandmother told him not to take the wrestling scholarship. You know why? Anybody want to guess who's watching this live or watching the replay of this? You got it already. Simply because of this. And you've said it out loud as I'm writing it. My grandmother was scared that my uncle would get hurt. She was scared of the unknown. You see the layers. My grandmother would and my dad doesn't have clarity on the specifics for my grandmother, but the projection. My uncle has a full ride wrestling scholarship to college. And because my grandmother is projecting or wrestling with the possibility that my uncle may get hurt or that my uncle has to face the unknown, and she maybe had to face unknown circumstances in her life, she says, don't take the scholarship because my fears are creeping into this. My father receives an opportunity in his early 30s to advance in his professional career, but he's scared because of what family would say or what family would do without him or the unknown or if he would fit the culture. So he walks away because he was scared. And in my early 30s, I received an opportunity to join a consulting firm, but I'm scared of what other people would say. I'm scared if I'll fit the culture, and I'm scared because I've never consulted before. So we're working with people in our organizations as leaders, the people we're trying to get through to make their sales goals, to have tough conversations, to deal with difficult patients and clients. We're trying to rev them up and pump them up and give them food and gifts and set milestones and markers for them to get them to get them to achieve and do well so we can promote them. And we're missing out on the fact that it's called human resources because we're dealing with human beings. And as much as we're dealing with human beings, sometimes as leaders, we won't even acknowledge their humanity. And they spend 80% of their week with you, and you won't even acknowledge their humanity. No, I'm not saying leaders and executives and senior directors need to be therapists, but you need to create a space for people to talk through and process some of their challenges, because once we start to tell the stories, in many cases, the darkness of the past begins to lose its ominous presence over us, and we can actually hit some of those milestones in the present. Yep. So I know what you're saying. Pierre, I see your dad's side, but what about your mom? Okay, let me give you my mom's side. This is my mom's side. I said, Mom, is there anything in your narrative? This is me in my early 30s, scared what others would say, that I don't fit the culture, unknown because I've never done it before. Mom, is there anything in your narrative that fits this framework? And she said, oh, yeah. She said, when I was in my 20s, I wanted to model. And I remember when we would go through old photo albums, like the real old ones with the yellowish film paper, and you pull it back and try to put it back and arrange it, and the photos are there and it's kind of sticky. I remember I would go through these photo albums with my family, and I would see these pictures of my mom in these modeling competitions, runaway shots of my mom. Even some she won a couple of awards, and I would always ask my mom, I say, hey Mom, why didn't you ever pursue this modeling thing? And she never really wanted to talk about it until recently. We had a conversation and she said, let me break this down to you. This is why I did not pursue modeling in a longer term past college, for a few things. She said, one, the church that I attended borderline condemned me for having an interest in modeling. The church that I attended borderline condemned me for having an interest in modeling. They said it was worldly. They said all sorts of bad things can happen to you. And they painted this dark picture of what a model could be and how a model could turn out. And she says, not only that, in my family, there were people who did not encourage me in general. So anything that I brought to the table in my own family was shut down. And then in my own head, I said, it's not worth it. So absolutely, the church becomes the others in the framework that Chris put in the chat here. The church becomes the others. Other people are saying this thing can't be, this thing shouldn't be. And it's great to listen to counsel. And you need to be very careful where the counsel is just the projections of other people's fears. Then family members who are not offering a support system to anything that's being offered, that turns into that inner voice that says, don't try. So she backs away, and it wasn't a pie in the sky. She had opportunities to continue to model, but she walked away from those opportunities because of the voice of other people, because of family, and because of the things that self-fulfilling prophecy that she started to play for herself. I said, Mom, take it back a generation. Take it back a generation. Jackie says, wow, the power of personal narratives. I've been running away from mine, but this is a great reminder to dig in again. Thank you, Pierre. Jackie, thanks for hanging out and joining us live. And if you're watching the replay of this, I know a lot of you resonate. I know a lot of you resonate with what Jackie is saying. We've been running away from that personal narrative, and it's time to dig in, because if we don't dig in and face, even recognize that we're gonna have to face some of the things that the previous generation did not face in order for us to go much further. Is it further or farther? All of my English people, let me know in the comments. Or to get past where the previous generation went or where they stopped, we're going to have to face some of these things in the narrative. So I asked my mom, I said, Mom, take it back a generation. Help me understand, what was it like for your parents? And she said, okay, let me tell you about my grandma. Let me tell you about your grandma. She said, your grandma was an entrepreneur. Your grandma was an entrepreneur. Chris, thanks for the clarity. Further is degree, farther is distance. All right. So to get much farther than our previous generation, we're going to have to face these things in our narrative. Tell me about grandma. She said, your grandma, my mom was an entrepreneur. You know, I perked up. I perked up when she said that, because my dad's an entrepreneur. My grandmother was an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship is literally in my blood. Grandma's an entrepreneur. Okay. Mom, what's the story? Antonio says we have to face it. If we don't, we will not be able to set up the next generation. Absolutely. Absolutely. Grandma, what was the scenario with grandma? Grandma had a store. Your grandmother had a store in Arkansas, and she was popular. She had contracts. She had vendors. She had people coming. My mother said it was a mix of like a general store and a grocery store. And she was making a great living, independent living, doing extremely well for herself. And my grandfather says to her, you're going to have to give up on that dream, because we are moving from Arkansas to Michigan. And I said, well, if grandma had all of this experience as an entrepreneur down south, when we moved up, did grandpa say, you were great down south, let's set up something for you to be great up north? And she said, no, got no support. So grandma is an entrepreneur doing extremely well in the South, has to move up and doesn't get any support. Doesn't get any support from family. And the people she's around up north are saying, no, don't go into entrepreneurship. Just do the regular thing. Just do the regular thing. I'm blown away at this point as I'm talking to my parents, and I realize that the trend is that at every single stage of possibility for my family, there has been pushback from other people, pushback from own perceptions, pushback from inner voices. And when you submit to that pushback, it ends up you being scared and walking away from each incredible opportunity that comes next. And you know what I said? Not anymore. I said, oh, not anymore. When the voices of other people start creeping into the perception of the other people start creeping into my head, not anymore. There's no space for you here. Let me tell you how difficult it is in some respects, in some contexts, even hanging out with you live, and some of you are watching the replay. If it's me inside of a building, me with a client, me in a closed space with the opportunity, and no outside people are watching, no family is watching, no opinionators are watching, no people who can cast a question on what I'm doing are watching, I'm good. Let's make it happen. If you look on LinkedIn right now and you look under the recommendations, the clients will tell you themselves that when I show up and do work like this in this space, there is no problem. And I started asking myself, what's the hesitancy of now hitting go live? Because I'm forced now by going live to open up myself to other people's opinions. I'm forced now to open up myself to people asking, does he actually fit in these social spaces with all of these people in social spaces doing stuff? I forced myself to wrestle with, wait, this is relatively unknown. being live and teaching and training, relatively unknown. And the voices started to creep in and started casting a little bit of aspersion. And I'm telling you, the people that we work with, all of the humans that we work with, their narrative may not look like this, but there are things 2 and 3 generations deep that they are wrestling with. And until we make it okay to tell the story, we will never have the quality of leaders that we need in our organizations. Until we make it okay to tell the story, until you make it okay to tell the story, not from a disadvantage, not from somebody pitying you, but tell the story from the perspective of the opportunity that you have now. I got multiple generations of people in my family who were scared, who were rejected, who were pushed back, who let that internal voice turn them around. And now I have the opportunity to change the narrative for everybody that comes after me. I have the opportunity to change the narrative for every company that I work for, that I work with, every client that I coach, every contract that I secure is a contract that my dad walked away from. Every new client that I secure is an opportunity that my grandmother on my dad's side walked away from. Every new piece of business I secure is a piece of business that my grandmother had to walk away from as a thriving business owner. Every opportunity on the table that extends me past my circles of knowing and comfort is an opportunity that my mom did not have when she wanted to be a model. Every single time we go through the story and talk about how we can change the direction, it sets you up for greater leadership. Even if you're not convinced, that's why you like reading certain stories. Think about the people that you read. Think about the people that you follow. Think about the people you celebrate. Think about the people you emulate. It's because of their story. They have this challenging part of their narrative. They were willing to face it and overcome it, work past it, and now it set them up for tremendous success, not without hiccups and mistakes and challenges that are a part of it, but the ability to change the narrative for the future. So I know this conversation is not often had in professional spaces. I'm telling y'all, listen, if you're a leader, you're in charge of people, you're running a team, and you're not comfortable, they have professionals to come in and walk you through as professionals how we navigate our stories. In my book, Leading While Scared, and in my keynote, Leading While Scared, I talk about this picture of a scared little kid, and that every time we face a difficult part of our journey, it activates a part of us that I call the scared little kid that remembers all of the traumatic stuff that happened to us. And it's only through speaking to and getting help for that side of you will you actually grow and will you actually flourish. And when I talk about the scared little kid, I talk about it in boardrooms and in classrooms. I talk about it used to be on conference stages, but now in virtual platforms, in a room full of executives. When I start talking about the scared little kid and the internal family systems theory and the past traumas, it's usually someone in the space that gets real quiet. And sometimes there's tears in their eyes because they ask the question, how did you know that I was dealing with it? Well, I know because we're all dealing with it. And you have the ability in 2021 to lead like never before. But it's going to require you to do a little digging, to fill in the places and spaces of your past history. And I'm telling you, it's not going to be pretty at all. It's going to be messy, uncomfortable, embarrassing. But as you sift through and as you celebrate now the opportunities that you have to change the story, you'll be able to lead like never before. So, man, 35 minutes in. This is really all I have for this Sunday Night Live. Hopefully, if you're watching this live, you got incredible value out of this session. Hopefully, as you're watching the replay of this, you got incredible value out of this session and you took notes. Book recommendation is It Didn't Start With You. That's the title of the book that I was reading or listening to on my jog. It Didn't Start With You. I want to encourage every single person who's hanging out with us to check out my 4 Nights to Clarity course, Gain Greater Leadership Clarity in 4 Nights. I designed this course, easel pad style, to walk you through 4 sessions to help you lead with greater courage and clarity in 2021. Yeah, that was a lot, wasn't it? That was a lot. Enjoyed hanging out, enjoyed being with you. I'll be back with you the next Sunday night. Enjoy this week. Go over the story. Talk about the narratives. Do the hard work. It's going to lead to better head work and lead to better leadership. All right. So that's all I got for this session. Really loved hanging out with you. I'm going to put my end screen up with all of my social media handles. Love to connect with you on social media, and I'll see you on the next Sunday Night Live.